Hey, welcome back, everyone, to this week's, this month's, I should say, Talks and Takes show. We got 9 exciting topics, news stories that we want to highlight today. And so we're going to take about 5 minutes for each one, and we're going to start letting Blair talk to us a little bit about the GYMS Act.
Excellent. So I'm glad I get to open this up on the GYMS Act. I have been, of course, pounding the table for the GYMS Act for a long time and emphasizing what a big deal this would be for any of us, and have used my own gym operations as sort of a way to kind of compare that for people. I will say this, right now we are at 62 co-sponsors. The last show, we were at 14 co-sponsors at the last show. We were at about just under 4,000 grassroots emails, and I think we're just over 16,000 grassroots emails. That's the good news. The other news is that the top 7 targets that are on your screen here, 3 from Georgia, 3 from California, 1 from Illinois, are the same top 7 targets that have been on this list the entire time. So that's a little bit disconcerting to me. There have been some real heavy lifts and efforts in some key states. Illinois has been extremely active. We've been very active in Washington, California, Arizona, Florida, Texas, and starting to get some momentum. But if you look at a lot of these states that are just in light gray, we have no co-sponsors from those states yet. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of work and effort in place to get co-sponsors, but we need to keep going after each of the U.S. representatives. The grassroots emails are important, but it's the individual reach out, the phone calls and the emails, and your personal stories. And your story specifically, especially if you're a constituent for that person in your congressional district. And then, Brent, I'm going to ask you this. If we hit our target, let's say north of 200 co-sponsors, regardless of whether the GYMS Act passes or not, we have upside there, don't we?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's one message I hope everybody hears very clearly. It is about the GYMS Act right now, and we're desperately trying to get relief for the industry. But this is also a long-term play. You know, the pandemic revealed that we didn't have the political clout and awareness about our industry that we needed. We're trying to, gain that as quickly as we can now. But there's other things that are going to be on the horizon, some of which are unknown, and also some of which are known, like the FIT Act, for example, and a lot of the state mandates that may come down in the future that would be harmful to our industry. So learning and putting this foundation in place, regardless really of the GYMS Act, is still important. No question.
Sara?
Well, I kind of worry about fitness as an industry as a whole, because the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, which was just passed, Biden just signed it last Wednesday. It was for $1.9 trillion. And there was a grant made of $28.6 billion to restaurants. And Brent and I were chatting before we turned the screen on, and it's like, I see that as a huge lobbying effort by the restaurants. And I worry that we need lobbying, but I think this grassroots effort is fantastic, but we need to harness it and work faster and work harder. Because what we're looking at is this $28.6 billion. They excluded, if the restaurants own 20 or more locations, they excluded governmental related restaurants, and they excluded publicly traded companies. So they're really trying to help the small guy, the small girl, okay? They're trying to help the individual business owner, and I would love to see that happening for gyms.
Yeah. I think a point to be made there with restaurants also is with the contraction in the fitness industry. Let's say there's roughly 27,000 health clubs, fitness centers left. That's how many restaurants are in New York City alone. And so where they have a much louder voice because there's so many more of them, the impact on fitness, if you were to call it per capita, was far greater on fitness than it was on food and beverage. They had, infrastructure in place. A case in point on this, by the way, just this morning, OLO, online ordering, IPO'd this morning. They've been out there for 15 years. That is the platform that restaurants do all of their online ordering on. That's been in place, as well as of course, the infrastructure for Uber Eats and et cetera. So review that Restaurant Act, see which US Congress people have signed on, and then if they have signed on and they have not signed on to the Gyms Act, that is a great impetus for you to go and contact them to get them onto the Gyms Act.
Yeah, that's a great analogy to the Restaurant Association. And part of it is that if you're a restaurant, it's almost assumed that you're going to be part of the trade association. And that's what we need. That's what we need to get to as our industry as well, right? It just needs to be an expectation. It's the right thing to do to support it and fund lobbying efforts and so forth. And of course, that's a big part of what the National Health and Fitness Alliance is about that we're forming as well. So on to the Gyms Act. There's been a lot of questions coming my way. And for those of us that live here in Texas, given our governor's lifting of the mandates and the restrictions and the capacity limits this last week. So I wanted to just give you the report that it is going pretty well. And we'll start with this video.
One business taking that ball and running with it, Lifetime Fitness. But not every business is taking the governor's announcements as welcome news.
More of our staff need to be vaccinated. More of our clients need to be vaccinated.
That's the case for a different local gym, Castle Hill Fitness. It's had mask wearing and social distancing measures in place for months now and will continue.
We've kind of been just following the science and really listening to the health officials in terms of what we could do to protect the community.
Many other businesses took to social media to let customers know nothing is changing, at least not yet.
I'm not one to judge necessarily, is that the right decision or not? But I am required to make that type of a decision for the business that I lead. From staff, the response has just been, I think, a sigh of relief. They don't have a choice of not interacting with people.
Wheatsville Co-op GM Mark Jacobs says they're excited for the day.
Yeah, so there's one business there, and I know the owner of that, Clayton Ainsworth, very well. I've also checked in with 3 others just to give you some very specific feedback. The Houstonian is maintaining all their protocols that they had before the lift was made. So is Memorial Athletic Club. So is the Cooper Fitness Center in Dallas. So there's 3 organizations that really haven't changed anything. They're still enforcing the social distancing, the mask wearing at this stage. Most of the businesses I'm visiting, including the Corpus Christi Athletic Club, have changed their signage to say on the front doors, mask highly recommended, but not required. And I thought that was interesting. And then here's some quick numbers. At Corpus Christi, the day after the mandates were completely lifted, they had 640 visits in the morning. 4 out of 640 people said they really didn't want to wear a mask. That's it. They had 540 people in the afternoon, and of the 500, only 5 said they didn't want to wear the mask. So that's similar to what I'm hearing from all the other owners that I contacted this morning. So clubs are keeping their restrictions in place, and it's not being a huge fight.
I spoke to one of our key customers in Texas yesterday on this topic, and they have decided to do the same thing. And early on, there has been some issues because what's happened is that the people that are in the clubs, they have a lot of mask mandates in place in the clubs. And then the governor announces no more masks. And then people go online and buy memberships that are saying, I'm going to now enter this space because no masks are required. Well, then they're coming in expecting not to wear a mask. And now they're mixing with people that expect to have masks. And so it's like a different customer that's now coming in the gym, and they're seeing elevated conflicts because of that. They kept keeping the mask mandates in place, though, that they have done. They saw barely a blip in cancellations for one day, and then flatline, back down on the cancellations.
Exactly. Bill, Sara, y'all want to say anything about what's happening in Texas and how that might relate to your areas of the country?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I think there is a transition, to Blair's point, from what we've taught consumers and now what they're allowed to do. You know, so it's not going to go from here to there, you know, like that. We're going to need to educate our staff on how to educate and transition our consumers back to whatever back is. So I think that being aware of education and modeling behaviors with staff and members is going to be really important right now.
Yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention, Bill, that was really important, and that is Dave Cardone in particular at the Memorial Athletic Club said he's going to take sort of what he's referring to as a feathered approach, meaning they're going to keep all the restrictions in place, you know, for the next week, maybe 2 weeks, and then maybe they're going to drop, you know, the temperature checks, and then maybe they're going to open up a few more spaces in the group exercise studio. But it's not just going to be, oh, now we're done with it. There's going to be a transition period, and I think there's a lesson there for everybody that's going to be coming in the next few weeks and months as far as opening goes. Sarah?
I think what we're seeing is that you can tell the great facilities and you can tell the ones that are really suffering. It's showing all the cracks in our seams this pandemic. If people can move quickly and change, they have good teams, they have good staff. Staff is more important than ever, because are they committed to safety and effectiveness? Are they committed to growing and reopening our facilities and making sure that it's not even every other week we have meetings. It feels like it's got to be every 3 days, because things are going to be changing more and more rapidly as, thank goodness, the end of May comes along, and as Biden tells us, you know, hopefully there's going to be herd immunity.
Right, exactly. All right, Sarah. So yeah, the next topic, you're all on it. It's National Women's Month.
Yeah, here we go. Entree, how's the beginning? Entrepreneur Barbie. Okay, so about 4 years ago, the first thing I did was I Googled female entrepreneur. And I mean, like, my heart stopped, because this was the first image that came up. And I was like, oh my God, no, it can't be it can't be the case. But I looked at it, and how are girls being raised? And we want to look at that. They're raised, don't brag, be seen and not heard, don't get dirty, be careful, you know, don't try new things, God forbid you fail, right? Play by the rules, don't fight, don't offend, play to play. You know, girls play house. There's no ending. There's no winner. There's no loser. Be polite and be a good girl. And I look at how boys are raised, which are so differently, and it's a man's world. And it is. Be a man, be tough, don't cry, never give up, don't quit. Even if you fail, don't quit. And it's all about winning. When the game ends, yes, there's a winner and a loser, but they both go out and they party together. The game is over. It's just a game. And that's the way they emulate business. So if we're going to look at business, ladies, we're going to look at it that no does not mean no. And I know on a personal level, it obviously does. But no does not mean no. It means maybe. It means I'm going to try again later. It means test me and try me. If you're negotiating a sale and you're trying to say, do you want this type of membership or that type of membership? It's like, keep pushing it. Questioning is not rude. If you're trying to negotiate your rent, you got to keep questioning. Asking directly for what you want, it's a little bit scary, but you should do it and you should negotiate. It's very important. And you don't need to be liked in business. You need to be respected. A lot of women live on that, I need to be liked. And then I look, you know, finally, it's like I always say, do you want to be the trophy? Or do you want to win the trophy? Okay, you can tell that's the Blackhawks when they won the pennant for like, what should I say? Stanley Cup for like, what is it, Blair? Like 10 times in a row? Sorry. But that's it. Thank you, Caitlin, for showing that for us. And it's hard because we think, oh, I want to be given a chance. I wasn't given a chance. You know what I'm going to tell you? Go out and take your chance. All right. You're the one that's going to change the rules. And I think we were talking, Bill sent an amazing email when we were going back and forth on this. And you said, how do we get more women to be sourced and not just selected? So how do we make sure that we're submitting our resumes, that we're being considered for this upward mobility position? And for me, obviously, I'm a little passionate about this.
Really?
But Bill, I liked what you said.
No, I mean, a lot of times we do. We think we're being equitable in our hiring, but we're only being equitable with who shows up. And we're not taking it that first step and saying, how do we get people to show up? and that goes with gender and race and every other area of diversity that you want to highlight and focus on and improve. So I think, for us to solve these kind of things, you got to go back to design, right? Whatever you design is what you're going to end with. And so if you want to design a diverse workforce, you have to design it as such by where you start in job descriptions and where you recruit and so on.
Yeah, if I could add on to that. Go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead, Brent.
Oh, I was just going to say, to Bill's point, your point as well, in the workplace, that's certainly one thing. And at IHRSA, we have great representation from women on our executive leadership team and throughout. But the thing we're having challenges with that I've seen over the years is when we solicit, let's say, applications for the IHRSA Board of Directors or the Industry Partners Advisory Council or the National Health and Fitness Advisory Council, which is happening right now, women are always underrepresented as far as applying and taking that step. So I just want to encourage all of the women out there that, to Sarah's point, take it up. Get involved, put your name out there, apply for these positions because we need better representation there, no doubt about it.
I brought up
at the leadership level.
I brought up in the prep that our entire leadership team for our gyms is 100% female. But I wonder sometimes if there's something in our industry where we're not encouraging enough of the entrepreneurship and the risk-taking piece. Right. So we do the CEO summit, and you see mostly men. I think there's some opportunity there to elevate as entrepreneurs.
And when I go and I look, like I was looking at Inc. magazine, 4.5% of females are the owners. Okay. So if we're 50% of the college students and we're 50% of the grad students, what happens when we reach entrepreneur and we take ownership and we take control? And I think often what happens is, as a woman, you feel like I've got to make a choice of business or family, and men don't make that choice. And we need to find a balance, and it's difficult to find the balance. And as a woman, I live in a series of guilt. I'm guilty if I'm working, I'm guilty that I'm not home. And if I'm at home, I'm guilty that I'm not in front of my computer. So I basically just carry my iPhone everywhere. And I think it works. The balance takes place.
Well, and it's one kind of point on that, Brent. In the advertising industry, 90+% of all consumer decisions are based on female purchasing or female decision. But yet 97% of ad executives that are writing the ads to sell all this stuff are men, and so again, it's endemic in all industries, I think, or most. Okay, so I got just a little bit of time on this one, and there's so much here, and we're going to cover some more stuff on design trends in a few minutes. So I'm not going to belabor each of these 10 things. I just want to kind of highlight a few. And one on the Build Back Better. Brent's been talking about a lot of that in his Take Fives and in his industry speaking with regard to reinvent, reimagine yourselves. This is an opportunity for that clean slate, to start over, to rebuild in a better way. And the consumer's looking for us to do that in a lot of ways. One of the things they're looking at is, do you have social causes? Are you focused on sustainability? So I think that's kind of important. You got craving convenience. This is a big deal. We've now talked about reducing barriers and reducing hassles for the consumer for so long. And now we're saying you can't come in, or we have said in recent months, you can't come in without an appointment. You can't bring a guest because I'm not sure if I can handle my member load at 25%. You can do this, and stream, blah, blah, blah. And we've got these barriers and when you come in, you got to wear a mask and don't go near anybody and so on and so on. So I think we got to really focus on bringing back the convenience and bringing back the ease of use and bringing back the lack of hassle. And that's everything from how people join, how people sign up for classes, how people interact, how people quit their membership. I mean, it needs to be seamless transactions so people aren't hassled and bothered, and they understand you're committed to a user-friendly interface. And the website's a big part. Joe Cerulli, our friend over in Gainesville, changed the verbiage and the approach on his online sales and dramatically increased his online sales. So you've got a lot of these things. You've got outdoor, you've got new word for me, physical and digital coming together, and how we deal with that. Playing with time. People can come in and work out at different times now based on telecommuting. So your peak demand times and your programming is going to change. You want to pay attention to that as you reopen to a normal flow, that you may want to change your schedules and your offerings based on people have more flexibility now. So you have more flexibility to serve them. Obviously, safety. Obviously, our worlds have been shaken. Obviously, people are restless. Obviously, people are looking to be cautious about cost. And then there's the opportunities with workspaces. A lot of club companies got ahead of that. They were doing workspaces in their facilities before. That's still a big opportunity, making it convenient for people to hang out and work before, after visiting with you as far as workouts go. So those are kind of some of the things that you can dive into. We'll provide the link in greater detail, but I'd like to throw it to our co-hosts here.
I'll go first. One of those you mentioned already, Bill, that really spoke to me was playing with time, and sort of this new concept that people have new sort of flexibility and also a sense of how they're using their time, because so many of them are working from home and they've had to adjust their schedules with kids being home and the new school routines and so forth. And in the report, it said that 51% of consumers chose, quote, time for myself among their top 3 life priorities. And I just think we've seen a lot of that as I'm seeing more research around the pandemic, that people have really been a little more reflective and thoughtful about how they're spending their time and how that's affecting their relationships and the relationships they're missing. When you see people in tears now that they've got the COVID vaccine and they're saying, I get to go hug my grandkids for the first time. I talked to my neighbor out in the front yard this weekend when I was doing some work in the yard, and he said, my wife and I just got our vaccines. We haven't seen our grandkids and hugged them in 9 months. And that's where they're going this weekend, right? They cannot wait.
I had the same experience that I'm teaching yoga at the YMCA, at my local YMCA. And there's another yoga instructor, and she needs a sub for her class. And she's going to visit her grandchildren in North Carolina. She's like, can anybody sub? And the problem is so few of us have been hired back that there's no one to sub. And the first thing that came to my mind was, you know what? Your students want you. Take your iPhone with you and film yourself in North Carolina and teach your class. The same way we're so excited that now our personal training clients who go to Arizona, Blair, and the people who go to Arizona during the winter, I'm not losing my clients because they can stream me as the teacher. Well, as the teacher, you can also be streamed. So I thought that I like that idea.
Blair, you have something to say to that before I say one more thing?
No, our topic turned red. I think we got to move to Dr. Cooper.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, Dr. Cooper. So I'm taking that one. Many of you know I worked closely with Dr. Cooper for almost a decade, several years ago. And some of you may be too young to know this, but Dr. Cooper's name is sort of the father of aerobics. And he was also the pioneer around preventive medicine and researching healthy behaviors and longevity. Well, Dr. Cooper recently turned 90 just a couple weeks ago. And he challenged people around the world again to, as he calls it, get Cooperized. And that's a word that really came out of Brazil and other parts of the world, because when they talked about exercise, it was synonymous with Dr. Cooper back in the 60s. So his 8 tips that he's reminding everybody to remember are: maintain a healthy weight, make healthy food choices most of the time, exercise most days of the week, take the right supplements for you, don't use tobacco, control alcohol usage, manage your stress, and of course, get a regular physical comprehensive exam. You know, he really was ahead of his time when he was preaching all these platitudes early on, decades ago, and he's continuing to share the message. One of his favorite quotes that I've used in many of my presentations over the years that I loved, and I'll throw it out to all of you, and that is, if you didn't know how old you were, how old would you be? If you didn't know how old you were, how old would you guess that you would be? And that's the only criteria you need to determine how well you actually are.
You know, on those 8 points right there, some of them, they seem so black and white, except for one for me. And that's the managed stress piece. And I wonder if that's the one that people struggle the most with, because when you're in the middle of stress, I mean, you know, it's like the fish doesn't know it's in water, sort of. And that's a tough thing to break out of. I think that's the one. And then back to some of the points that Bill was just covering on the international and some of the other stuff we're hearing now so much around mental health. And I think that our entire industry has a real opportunity right there. But I think the managed stress thing for me is the most nebulous of all of those.
Oh, I think it's the old stuff, because I'm an idiot. I think I'm like 30 years old. Don't laugh, Bill. I'm playing pickleball the other day. I've decided to take it up because at some point in my life, I am going to pull back a little bit from work. So I thought, well, I've got girlfriends who play pickleball. So what am I doing? I'm an idiot. I'm wearing running shoes. They moved it from inside to outside. I'm sliding on the court. I'm diving for balls. My 61-year-old body thinks I'm 30, okay? And I hope I look like 25, but I'm doing this idiot stuff. So what do? I tore my meniscus. I'm here in Colorado right now, and I can't speak because, like an idiot, I'm playing pickleball like I'm 30 years old. And you know who my competitors were? They're all 75, but I had to win.
Yeah, what do you mean you're thinking about pulling back? The last 3 phone calls I've had with you have been from somewhere like Aspen. Oh, I'm on the ski lift, Brent. Okay.
I was going down a run.
Oh.
But I do look at Dr. Cooper and I say, you know, that guy is 90 years old and he's killing it. Elaine Lillane, how old is she? 112? You know, these icons of fitness. Jane Fonda, look at her at the Grammys. I want to be her.
All right, Bill, what do you have to add to this one before we move on?
No, I think we're good there. I've always respected Dr. Cooper. It ages some of us. There's probably a lot of people on our call today that have no idea who Dr. Cooper is, but he was a pioneer. Brent worked directly with him for many years, and I think his top 8 are just fantastic and words to live by.
I don't know if a lot of people remember that he actually coined the phrase aerobic, I believe, and he did so much around cardiovascular training, but he also really made a big push into weight training. And there was a specific story about that. I believe he went to pick up a marathon runner at the airport. Brent, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. Went to pick up a marathon runner at the airport who had trouble carrying his own luggage. And I think that's sort of, you know, when he recognized that strength training had to be a big part of fitness at that time.
Well,
is that right?
He was sought out by everybody. He was sought out by politicians, business leaders, Zig Ziglar. I mean, everybody went to see Dr. Cooper for their physical and
Oh yeah, the key political leaders from around the world would find at the Cooper Clinic, no question. Then I'll end on this one more quote that he always had. And now this is 30 years ago, right? He'd say, everybody needs to walk their dog every night for at least 30 minutes, whether you have a dog or not.
Excellent. All right.
Okay, Bill, keep us on this positive tone with emphasizing the positive. And I believe we got a video to kick you off.
Okay, so Sara, thanks for doing that video, by the way. So I'm gonna talk through just a little bit of this, and I want to turn it over to you guys to kind of take, you know, what do you think of those 10 positives? Like, how does it play out inside fitness? Because I think that's how we want to think about this. And when Sara first proposed this idea and took us through this, I remember, let's take number 10, for example, pet adoption. In the Wenatchee Valley, there were literally no more pets left to be adopted. And this was probably just 3 months into the pandemic. As we started to look at our clubs and said, you know, God, the vibe just isn't the same as it used to be. We need to kind of reinvigorate the vibe in the clubs. One of the things that we did was to bring in dogs for petting. So as you come in the front door, certain hours, there's dogs for petting. And so just think about the principle of this. Why were people adopt pets? Because they had these at home. They're, you know, in this pandemic, there's a lot of issues with depression and people get pets. And by God, I mean, you can't help but smile when you're petting a dog that's wagging its tail, right? So how do we take the principle of why people were adopting pets and how do we put that into our club? I will tell you that if you do this, your members will be extremely happy when they come in. And if they're allergic to dogs, they'll just avoid them. So that's one of the things. It is amazing to me how when something so negative happens, just how much the human spirit can try to find the opposite of that in what's happening in their life and try to find something positive. So now let me ask my team here, of those things, what is your favorite of these, or how do you see some of these playing out in fitness?
I really liked when you were talking about the pets. I think we can, and this may be a little tacky, but you know, I've never shied away from that. How can we monetize some of this? So if we've got all these pet adoptions, let's start a pet walking, you know, program. And that meets early in the morning at 7 a.m. You meet in front of the gym and you guys walk, okay? Masks on. And then hopefully as we get into the early summer, we can take our masks off. So I look at this and I think, you know, what can I do? And then I started thinking about, what if we did a live streaming workout and everybody had to wear their PJs? Okay, because you're living in your PJs anyway. So your morning yoga class, let's just hope you're not wearing like some type of nightgown, but you're doing, you know, downward dog and everybody's wearing their PJs and it makes it a fun workout. So I like that you know, there's been a lot of negativity, you know, tremendous negativity around diversity and uninclusion, but let's turn it around and let's embrace the positive.
Yeah, I would, I mean, you could do a PJ day at the club too. I mean, you might have to be a little tighter on the dress code standards, but yeah, you could do PJs at the club and that'd be fun. But I think, you know, if this weren't bothering me, what would I be thinking about? Like flipping the negative into the positive. And I think part of the fact about people being isolated at home is causes them to go into that place of what's wrong, not what's right. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, always helps me get out of a funk is being around other people that have positive stuff going on. So, you know, take inventory of your life. You know, what do you have to be thankful for instead of what is not working as you want it to? And I think this is a big deal about what's going on for us right now.
Great.
Of course, admittedly, I'm probably the goody two-shoes of this quartet. That's probably not even a debatable fact. But so I really like to focus on the family part. And not only did they mention focus on the family, but they talked about their own nutrition and their own mental health. All of those three things which I think tie back to the trends globally that were mentioned about people taking time for themselves and caring for themselves so that then they can care for other people as well. So that was my big takeaway from that. And the priorities that people have, just sort of, again, being reflective and thoughtful and intentional about how they're spending their time and what's going to make them their best self, which includes managing stress and those kind of things. So.
Yep.
I also like the nutrition aspect of it. And now I guess we're on to 9 keys to becoming future ready. And I think we're starting with the video. Thank you, guys. I like this because I want to look at how all of this, we can apply this to our health clubs, okay, and our classes and our training sessions. So the number one was take a stance on purpose. And I love CVS because CVS decided we're not selling tobacco. They took a big financial loss, but they decided we're taking a stand on our purpose. And we can look at what our purpose is as a facility. Maybe we offer free post-COVID rehab sessions. Maybe we do free classes at a homeless shelter. Maybe we do family-focused fitness classes. Brent, I know that'll make you happy. And then we've got number two is value agenda. And you look at how Apple, you know, made their boxes, I think sometimes cost more than some of the parts that are put into the equipment. And the boxes, it was the whole experience. So what experience are you going to offer? What's your focus? What's your sweet spot? Is it female training? We offer the best equipment. We're the most cost effective, or maybe we're the most expensive and you get the best quality. Number three was culture. Making sure it's your secret sauce. First thing I think of, not just Amazon with those 2 pizzas, keeping the group small. What's your culture? Look at Les Mills. It's all about the tribe. Look about Zumba. There's not enough neon lycra in the world to accommodate those people, but it's a culture. And then radically flatten your structure. We're not in those Excel charts anymore, you know, where it's a hierarchy. We're talking circles. We're talking making sure we have those weekly staff meetings, those monthly get-togethers. And then number 5 is turbocharge your decision-making. We can't just wait around for these things. We've got to dive in, take your top quality people and sit down with the 3 or the 4 of you and get it done. Get those ideas from the staff meetings and then implement them and give them a timeline. And we've got to treat talent as scarcer than capital. Our people are more important than anything. And this is cool. I'm going to use Netflix as an example here. I'm also going to use them later on. But they had a great thing. They actively counsel out people that are adequate performers. Okay. And what that means is they don't want adequate. They want excellence. And so what we need to do is we need excellent employees for our staff. We need the best front desk staff, the best sales staff, the best managers and accountants and group fitness instructors. And then adopting that ecosystem view is key. Making sure, I think I talked about this, if you're gonna film that group, if you're gonna teach live group X, film it, make it live stream, record it, and make it on demand. Okay, so it's an ecosystem. So like Tesla opened themselves up to all their vendors, you can also open yourself up to reuse and repurpose things, and also ingratiate yourself with restaurants and sporting goods stores. Number 8 is build data-rich tech platforms. Don't rely on Facebook. It goes away. Instagram goes away. Stories goes away. You want to make sure you do those bait, click, connect, and keep. Get those email addresses. They're your people. And then accelerate your learning. Dive in, make mistakes, learn, and move on. Do the next thing. So when I look at becoming future ready, we need to accelerate things and make it seamless.
And if you're not investing heavily in technology right now, you're not going to be future ready. You need to be investing in the right technology that are really focused on having the right APIs available. That is one of the things that's going to enable so much of this on the list. As you're adopting purpose, don't do it as a tactic, have it as a strategy. Using culture, that's a heavy lift because you have to build from the inside out to execute on that one. But those that do differentiate themselves.
And you can't fake it. You can't fake culture.
Right.
Bill, you want to take us to the next topic? Here we go.
Yeah, let's play it. Thank you for playing that. Yeah, this is from Justin Honus on the Active Wellness team. And some of these seem really simple, but when you put them together and really organize yourselves, it's important. People are going to want more space. You have two challenges. You have an existing facility. How do you reconfigure and add space? You have a new build, then you've got new options. You know, space in sinks, space in lockers, space in walkways. You know, but really looking at the space allocation in your facility from the consumer's eyes based on what people want with not only semi-privacy, but also the physical distancing. The vendors and partners and sponsors of our industry that provide all the products have done such an amazing job in the last several years on storage systems and compartments and workstations with regard to exercise. So take advantage of those. Use your vendors to really help you brainstorm and design adequate spaces that can be used functionally, but also have good form. Materials, we talked about that. You know, are you recycling water bottles? Are you providing water bottles with refill stations? You know, what are you doing to show your commitment to the environment and sustainability? I love the pod idea. We've talked about that in previous shows. You know, pods can be people that are like-minded that you can put together and hopefully get them connected, you know, and getting along. Or pods can be bringing people in as a group. We're going to have 5 people from a neighborhood come join the club and work out together. But we're really thinking through what people did on their own with working out in pods. How do you bring that inside? And then we talked about the outside. Blair's done some great stuff outside at his clubs. So many operators have done an amazing job. Our buddy Scott, Gillespie, Seiko, I mean, on and on and on. But the thing about outside is look at outside from the perspective of how do you recapture space that's unusable, but make it a destination, make it on purpose, make it part of your brand. Don't just throw some stuff out on a concrete slab and call it outside training. Do your homework and do it the right way within the brand, but look for those spaces outside. And if you don't have any, you can still do outdoor programming, parks, trails, so on.
I think there's also an opportunity.
The facility design over the years. I looked the other day, and I think I've done over 120 something facility designs over the years for all different scales and sizes. You mentioned getting the vendors to help design those layouts. And I would just issue this caution that a lot of those vendors are the ones selling you the treadmills and the bikes, and they're going to put in as many as they can possibly fit on that layout. And I think what we've learned through the pandemic is to get more space is fine. The members like it. And oh, by the way, that may mean we need less equipment, and that's okay too. Right.
Excellent.
I think the days
and I think
it as tight as we can are gone.
And we have to look at moving outside and how we're going to do it. You need to make sure that you've got it on your class schedule, that you've got the location, that you're sending a text message or it's going to an app where people know where to go. And you can use parking lots, like you can get together with a sporting goods store or a nutrition area or a physical therapy clinic, and you could move that class and do it outside of that facility if you make sure that people are bringing their own mats, outside ready mats, and people also are taking and putting turf outside in the parking lot. They get the permission from the landlord and they're using it that way. I think outside is going to be key. And I think, Bill, what I love is using inside stuff, having your staff walk the floor more. Maybe you can have more open space where people are going and using bands and balls on their own if we provide some support without just, charging them for personal training.
One of the best practices that I am hearing is don't just do outside the same as inside. Make it a different program, different offering, make it a different thing. So you're not just having the exact same thing inside and outside. Blair, you're going to say something?
I also think about how you might bring outside inside. In other words, how are you doing the design of your facility with roll-up, if you can do roll-up doors, if you can do nano walls? How do you use turf to just have the inside feel more like the outside? The inside can feel more like the outside, maybe with some scent in the air, maybe turning the air over more times an hour, getting more light in the facility, more natural light in the facility. So if people, and one last thing on this, I know we're going to move on. Remember, indoors, people will tolerate a temperature change in whatever they're doing, whether it's a cocktail party or a workout of about 8 degrees. Outside will tolerate about a 60, 70 degrees temperature variance because they prefer to do stuff outside. Outside's here to stay, and it's going to be a big deal.
Good points, Blair.
All right, so I'm going to pick up this last one, 5 economic trends to watch. This is from JP Morgan Chase, and it's Jim Glassman, who's their head economist of commercial banking. Now, this was on January 12th that he talked about these 5 trends, and it starts with sort of answering the question, as vaccinations ramp up, what should we expect? And you know how the news is always going to report things as though things are going to be linear. So you heard early on in the news, there's no way that we can get people vaccinated. It's going to take a year and a half to get everybody vaccinated. But what happens is really smart people that really understand logistics are looking at the failures of that every single day and improving on everything every day. That's why last Saturday there were 3 million vaccinations done in one day. The vaccinations aren't going to go like this. They're going to go like this. And that's why they're saying everybody available by May 1st. So he talked about that in the ramp up vaccinations. The first thing is a return to normal. And he said it's going to depend on the rate of vaccinations. But one of the key points in that was that savings have almost doubled during this pandemic. Per capita across all households, savings almost doubled. Second one, fiscal relief. And at that point, he was talking about the $912 billion that got passed right before the turn of the new year, and saying that there will be something coming out in the first quarter that's really going to drive a growth in the economy. Next thing was the job market lag, and that he expects unemployment to return to 3.5 to 4.5% by Q4, but it's going to be a little bit of a lag behind the money that's rolled out as people try to figure out how many jobs they're going to bring back, because they've streamlined a lot of stuff. That doesn't mean that they have to have the same number of FTEs as they had before. Next, inflation worries are premature. He said that's because this is really a rescue package, not a stimulus. And he talked about the key points between that. Rescue package gets you more back to normal, not like, pouring gas on the fire. Lastly, he said equities are looking ahead. And I thought this was really a great part of this. The pandemic has highlighted tremendous positives in U.S. entrepreneurship and just how flexible technology can be, how flexible entrepreneurs can be, and that the things that came out of this are going to fuel our economy for a long time to come. So those are the 5 economic trends, and I'll leave it to you guys to react to that.
Another one of the things they mentioned in their article that I read and digging a little deeper was that there's this pent-up demand for services and experience. So people were still buying stuff online and having it delivered at home, but they miss going out to their restaurant and spending money. They miss doing traveling, like I know you're doing now, Blair, and you're doing, Sara, getting out and going on those vacations and going to hotels. And that's where you're coming to us today from, Blair, is in a lodging establishment. So people are anxious to get out and spend in those specific areas where they can, again, have experiences, be around other people, something they haven't been able to do for months and months. And they're really optimistic about that.
And they haven't been spending money because you can't go out. For the past year, I couldn't go out to restaurants. I had to learn how to cook. It was frightening, but I embraced it. I took it on. We saved a ton of money because we used to go out or order in. Okay, I don't go shopping. It sucks buying Lululemon online. I'm sorry. It's all about the experience. It doesn't fit properly, and I'll never buy a pair of shoes again online. Doesn't work. The experience is going to be great, and I truly think that when things lift, and I hope it's May 1st and not May 30th, but when things lift, we've got to be January ready as club owners. We have to think, what are the programs that were so successful back, like, what is it, about a year and a half ago, January in 2020, what programs, what offerings we made, because these people have an extra, what is it, $1,200 in their pocket? Is it 1,200 or 14?
14.
14. Is it good? They have an extra $200. They can go shop and buy a couple pairs of shoes. But let's hope they spend that money for the experience of coming in the clubs. And the Netherlands just did a huge research study. They had 1,000 people in the study, and it said 97% of them said, I need to go back to the club because I'm going to get a better workout. And over 80% of them said, because I need to connect with others, the social aspect. So I think our finances and our need for social interaction are going to help our industry.
I'd say this too, as we rolled through this list today, and as we talked about each of these topics and these trends aren't happening in a vacuum. You should think about these financial trends with the 10 positives, with the economic trends that Bill laid out internationally. I think you're going to see how trends overlap and how the economic trends can really fuel some of the other trends. So none of these things are happening in a vacuum. And I think, figuring out how you triangulate to some more profitable point between these trends, I think is an important way to use the information.
Yeah, no doubt there is a lot of crossover, and I've noticed that too, Blair. Even today with some of the trends, they said it in different ways, but some of those themes, when you read down the description of what their title was, they're quite similar. So there's some predominant themes we should all be paying some good attention to for sure. And Bill, I believe you're going to give us a little bit of a recap. You've been taking notes, and maybe you can sum us up a little bit before we go to the chat.
I've got a couple points on each thing, and then we'll let the panelists chime in, and then we can go to our Q&A. Number one, make your calls, emails, and texts. Let's get this GYMS Act passed. Be involved in that. It's a big deal. Number two, transition your members and staff through this transition as we all open up over the next several months or next several weeks. Number three, Sara put in men's upbringing and women's upbringing, and we talked a little bit about designing diversity, but men are part of the problem and part of the solution on anything that's inequitable with regard to the way our organizations are set up currently. So for women, I would say don't only have women mentors, but have men mentors. And for men, I would say develop your female staff as equal or more than you develop your male staff, but be on purpose and be intentional about it, or you won't get any change in results. On the international, I want to shout out Euromonitor is where we got that international information. I didn't give them credit verbally. We've shared the link in the chat box. Check it out. Dr. Cooper's stuff with Brent was just amazing. The 8, I love, if you don't know how old you are, how old would you be? And I love the everybody walks their dog every night, even if you don't have a dog, because that fed into adopt a dog, right? Or pet a dog. So I really love where Dr. Cooper has continued to be such a force in our industry and lifestyle. The specific experiences that Sara was talking about, we talked about circles. We got to be horizontal in how we run our companies, not vertical. We can't be top down. It's got to be horizontal. And I love the circle analogy and the better team analogy that we discussed. I'd like to give a shout out to ABC on their revenue cycle management and club management suite, because a lot of what that product does tied right in to what we were sharing about with regard to Sara's point about the future ready and understanding your information. And so I think that was just fantastic. We kept coming back to the same thing about experiences, that we've got to focus on sharing experiences. And as we talked about all these different things, like Brent said just a second ago, they all weave together. They're not mutually independent or exclusive. And I think when you look at it in the whole framework, we can all take advantage of these opportunities to grow and expand. So those were kind of my big thoughts that came out of what everybody shared. And I'd like to see what you guys think as well.
I was intrigued by the overlaps, like you brought up, Bill. That's the thing that really intrigued me. And then everybody talked about fast moving, because I think if anything, it's been this acceleration of adaptation, that this week, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And then next week I wake up one morning and it's like, I don't think so. And it's a restructuring and a reorientation. And again, a celebration of our staff, because for us, for SCW, when we got our PPP loans, our CARES Act loans, 100% of it went into our staff. So that's saying to me as well. And also family. Brent, it's all about family. I can't tell you, 5 days out of the week, Scrabble. And again, I'm about as good as Scrabble. Me and my son and my husband play Scrabble. I'm as good as Scrabble as I am at pickleball. So my knee sucks and my head is not quite there either. So.
Well, good. Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to say the topic on talent and how much more important talent has become. We always knew is so critical to running all of our organizations, but it struck me personally in 3 ways. Number one, as most of you know, I've chaired some Rex Roundtables, and Rex Roundtable sponsors this event. And those groups are really all about who's the members in those roundtables. That's what makes them so special, is the talent that's on each of those roundtables and how they're willing to share and be open. So that's number one. Then within my own organization now at IHRSA, you know, we're running on 50% less employees than we used to. And I know many of you out there are on reduced staff. And when you've got reduced staff, it has to be the best staff, right? You can't run reduced staff and not so good staff. It's got to be, you got to have the best people that you can get. And then finally, just to the whole community that's been so supportive of all the things we're doing at IHRSA, volunteering for the headlight teams and the committees and advisory councils. I mean, again, talent drives the bus, and it's just been awesome. And I appreciate everybody's support. That's what that spoke to me about.
Yeah, I've been blown away by how much overlap there is in all this, how mental health keeps coming up when we talk about everything from the top 10 positives to, and I think think of how all this kind of weaves together, right? Like the whole point about family, people being more focused on family because of the pandemic, I think because it gave them some help with mental health. Everything that people became more focused on, it's like people almost had to become more introspective and a little less extrinsically motivated, a little more intrinsically motivated. And I'm not sure we're going back anytime soon. I think that there's the things that Sara was talking about culture being, the secret sauce. That's about tapping into people's intrinsic motivation. Let me put it this way. If you want a culture that delivers excellence, if you want a culture that's inclusive, if you want a culture that can really execute on a great customer experience, people must be intrinsically motivated to do that. And so so almost everything here to me sees a pendulum swinging towards intrinsic motivation and away from extrinsic motivation. And I think that our industry is well positioned to take advantage of that opportunity. And I see it keep coming up in all of our topics.
It's an evolution of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And we need to tap into that.
Yep.
And it's happening. It's happening because there's more and more of our frontline workers, our trainers, our teachers are becoming life coaches, are becoming nutrition coaches. Not replacing the therapist or replacing the registered dietitian, but becoming a coach. And that's maybe where we can pull it in to not just be fitness, but to be wellness.
And look at how that ties into the top topic on the 9, I forget what we called it there, but the first one is purpose, and getting people bought into your purpose and it's not just telling them what it is. What they do on a daily basis, how they go into has to have a direct impact on purpose. If they can do that, you start to tap into that intrinsic motivation, and that taps right back into what Brent was saying about talent. And, all these topics we throw out there, they're kind of out there, but, you connect the dots and it weaves a hell of a tapestry because it's there right now.
Well, thank all of you again for joining us. We're going to segue now into the question and answer section. So if you have some questions you'd like to ask any of the panelists, please submit them in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can here over the next 15 minutes or so. The first one says, for the long-term benefit, if we're asking consumer support around the GYM Act, should we be more specific about the mask and social distancing policy as an industry? Bill, I mean, you're part of the headlight team working on some of the standards and active and safe specifically. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take the standards piece of it. Yeah, I mean, we have to up our game, and Sara's involved in the work that we're doing as well, and she's been a major contributor to that work. But we have to up our game. We have to hold ourselves to the highest level of standard of care for not only members, but patients and those that are inactive. And so there's a lot going on. IHRSA is doing some great work on the active and safe commitment pledge, which we're revising some of the verbiage to make it more comprehensive with regard to the whole world being able to adopt it. We're doing some great work on best practice sharing, and also looking at the IHRSA Code of Conduct and making recommendations to the board of directors to consider reviews and updating some of that language so that we can have a higher standard within the industry. So I think that there's a lot of good things happening on that front. Sara, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I also I'm on the headlights committee with Bill, and there's and it's international. So there's like all these people from all around the world, and I'm not going to say any names or anything, but I remember someone from a smaller country that's an island saying, we need to come up with standards. And I remember another gentleman, I actually think it was Frank, came and said, you know, it's like herding cats in America. We've got 50 states, we've got 4 time zones, we've got big clubs, small clubs. You know, your country is as big as I think half of Indiana. And to get us to agree, it's a challenge. It's not easy, guys. You want to say, here, do an HVAC system. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in Georgia. I don't need this. I open a window. That's my HVAC. Don't tell me I've got to repurpose my air every 6 minutes or 10 minutes. So it's fascinating to see the differences in different parts of the country. We were driving from Chicago, going from Chicago to, we're in Aspen right now. We drove through Nebraska, no masks through it. And it was like, okay. And in Chicago, you live in your mask. And then you go to Aspen, and anybody under the age of 30 is not wearing a mask, and everyone over the age of 65 is wearing a whole suit, one of those astronaut suits. So it's fascinating to see the differences. But I think that I still look at coming together. I still look at the commercials we saw back in March. Remember? We're all in this together. And I think as we're coming out of it, I don't know how you guys feel, but I got my first vaccine. My husband just got his first vaccine today. And I feel better. I feel more positive.
Yeah, same here. So because of, we take care of my 93-year-old dad 4 nights a week. We have a multi-generational, and so I've got to get both of my vaccines, which is why I'm traveling. And I agree. It does change how you think, and sort of the passport that you now have to do other things. I'm wondering on the standards piece, like when we talk about air, if there aren't some just sort of basics that we could do. And Bill, you and I've talked about this before, just like carbon dioxide levels. Just to say that maintain carbon dioxide levels during peak hours under this. I mean, it might be that simple, and that stuff is very easy to monitor. And then whether you do it with an open window or turning over HVAC, or whether you're in a seasonal climate. But I do think that we need to come together on standards before they're brought to us by government, and perhaps we're not in the room to discuss what those standards are. And I think that eventually leads to some sort of licensure at some point. We know they don't have a lot of money to do that now, but that's probably going to happen. Look, if you got to have a license to cut fingernails or hair, my guess is that that's probably going to come our way, and we need to make that really positive for our industry, and it's going to be around standards.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was, I'm sorry to jump in here one more time, but I was driving in the car and I was thinking of those standards, and I was talking to my son who's at business school, right? And I said, you know what though? I'm not quite sure we even need standards. Sorry, Bill. I was talking, thinking this through. And I said, I don't know if we need standards, because if the government ever imposes it, they're going to pull experts in to set the standards for us. And my son slowed the car down because he was driving, and he looked over at me. He said, "That's so cute." And I went, and because the government is going to pick whoever they want to set our standards. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take this headlights committee a little more seriously, because it's true. They'll just set they'll pick their best friends who owns one gym upstate.
We saw what happened with their decisions on social distancing, mask, and the pandemic. So we know that is not a pretty outcome.
That's right. And we're trying to stay ahead of it with y'all's help. So Bill and Sara, thank you for being on that team. And I can't name everybody else or we'd be here too long, but we got a lot of good people volunteering and helping IHRSA make sure we get those in place, which really on the short term is becoming more important as states like Texas, Mississippi, Montana lift the restrictions. The clubs really need some place to turn to, so they're not all making their independent decisions, which is one of the issues in our industry already. So we need everybody to coalesce around the active and safe and have sort of that standard of care, if you will, for sure. The next question I can answer very quickly because it's short. It says, can someone who's running a not-for-profit be an applicant for the National Health and Fitness Alliance Advisory Council? And the answer is yes, you can do that. That's a very inclusive organization. To be part of the National Health and Fitness Alliance and the lobbying and the advocacy and the public affairs, that's exactly what it's for. It's going to include all types of facilities, all sizes, nonprofits, for-profits, private equity groups, suppliers. So yes, come one, come all, please do. The next question, how do clubs view mental health versus mental wellness? Blair, you were kind of talking about mental health there at the end. Do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're just, I don't know if we're, just spinning the language to sound different when we say that or not. Maybe they're the same thing. I think it's so new to our industry as a whole that it's going to take us bringing in a bit more expertise. Bill, you've done a lot more on this than I have.
Well, I mean, I don't know that that's true, but I do have them bifurcated in my mind. Mental health is acknowledging that you have something you're dealing with mentally and getting treatment for that. And be it treatment, being exercise, nutrition, medicine, counseling, what have you. And then I look at mental wellness as, what are we doing for everybody? Because all of us are mentally challenged in some ways with stress, anxiety, depression at times, isolation, insecurity, pick your addiction, pick whatever it is. I mean, we all have this mental challenge, called, we call it mind body, we call it stress, we call it a lot of things. So I put mental wellness into the general category of everybody and mental health into somebody that knows they're working on something specific, if that makes any sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, I do think that's good. And I do think there's a very real opportunity coming out of the pandemic, which a lot of these trends are supporting. And that is there are people that are being challenged mentally, whether it is truly mental health. And we've shared statistics I have on that. And everybody's probably tired of hearing them. So, but we have the resources to help people through physical activity and a sense of community and a sense of support and encouragement to help people through a lot of those issues and bring them back. So I encourage you as clubs to think about that. The next question, how can we encourage women to rise up through the corporate ranks? Sara, you want to start that one?
Ask them to apply. Ask them. And I'll give you an example. I was honestly feeling insecure being involved with the headlights committee. And I was nervous because I thought, oh my gosh, these are these big guys in business. And I know I've been in the industry, longer than dirt, okay? But it still makes you nervous. And this guy, Bill, sent me an email and he said, Sara, opine, share, and that's, someone telling me to talk. Hello, what's wrong with that? But it helped. So I guess what I would say is, if you see a woman of color, okay, or a person of color, if you see anyone that you think needs this chance, don't assume that they don't need support, even though they're outspoken and seem confident. Everybody needs that little extra support and that little extra shove. Sometimes we were trying to find presenters for some of our conferences, and we went on Instagram to find some Black women and Black men that could teach, and we encourage them and help them, create outlines and help them really push. And it may not be the top level presenter who's been doing this for 25 years, who's, as white as can be, but they've got all this experience. You got to help elevate. We have a responsibility. That's the way I feel.
Right. Somebody put in the chat, and I want to share this and then add on to it. Jumping back a question, they say, health is a state, wellness is an active pursuit. And they're talking about mental health. And it reminds me of what Dr. Cooper, another thing he would always tell people is maintaining health simply means the absence of disease. If you're maintaining wellness, that's the pursuit of a healthy, well-lived life. And so probably that applies to health, mental as well as physical.
So that means then that I have been really focusing on mental wellness, because this right here, this is the valet ticket to my golf bags for this afternoon. So.
Okay, the next question is regarding facility design. Clubs should continue to pay attention to airflow, HVAC quality. Fresh air is an important differentiator. Don't you agree we still need to focus on that?
I'll just tell you this. If you haven't gotten a carbon dioxide monitor and put it in your club just to measure the air, do it. They're inexpensive. We're not putting them in the clubs. We're measuring. So outside carbon dioxide levels are generally at about 420 parts per million. At our Eastmont location, we were at 408 parts per million when we first opened up in the morning the other day. And then we move it around. We put it in a cycling studio, 7 people in, and it went up to about 750 parts per million. So we opened the door, and we're experimenting with ways to keep the carbon dioxide levels down. When you're in your car with your family going to the restaurant, you're going to go up to about 2,000 parts per million. Sometimes it's a little longer, 6,000 parts per million. I have learned so much by just using the carbon dioxide monitors, and sometimes it's turning the air over more on the HVAC, but sometimes it's just opening windows when it's the right temperature, putting a fan at a door, and it's amazing how much you can adjust those carbon dioxide levels. I would encourage everybody to start experimenting with carbon dioxide monitors. It's a great proxy. People are exhaling. It's a great proxy for what exists in the air and how clean you can keep the air. If you're under 600 parts per million, the air is incredibly healthy and clean.
Yeah.
That's great to know. And what do those monitors cost?
100, Sarah, we bought several at different price points, from $100 to about $160.
That's
and then,
awesome. Because remember, everybody was complaining, I was gonna do this. This does not look very healthy. Doing the temperature. Everybody's like, oh, I'm not gonna do temperature. It's la 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 la. And it's like, now it's just, everybody does it. And I think that that's a great way to measure.
And so our GM is now carrying one with her when she goes to Costco, when she goes around, just to get some understanding of basics.
So Meg just threw something in the chat box. She says their health expert recommends 720 or lower.
Awesome.
Thanks, Meg.
That's excellent. Thank you, man.
And our final question is, how big of a challenge are clubs having enforcing mask wearing since the restrictions were lifted? And I touched on that in the very beginning related to Texas. I threw out some real numbers. It's very, very small, like 1% of the people are saying, hey, I don't have to wear a mask anymore, but it's very, very small numbers so far.
So we're close to getting through this, but we're not through it yet. The two strong variants were just discovered in California, and 2 cases of the variants. So we still need to be somewhat safety conscious here.
And diligent. You're gonna have to be diligent. you're better off keeping a mask policy. More people are interested in you having a mask policy, even when the government says there doesn't have to be one. They have not been conditioned. Bill spoke to this. I do think it has to be kind of a ramp down and conditioning of that consumer. Whether your first is, hey, when you're outside exercising, you don't have to wear a mask. That's at least a statement about, you know, safety there. So,
and it is
people are having some issues. I have a good friend in.
It's very geographic, depending on where you are in the country. To, you know, people's attitudes.
Yep.
As Sara mentioned, when she was traveling across the country, it can be almost night and day from one state to the next.
Yep.
So you've got to make your own decisions based on your own geography and your own club and your own circumstances, for sure. So that's the end of our time. Thank all of you again for joining us this month. Thanks to my 3 esteemed colleagues and panelists. And we do hope very much that you'll join us again next month. And please give us feedback if you have some. We want to make it entertaining and insightful and helpful, all of the above. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.